Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto's hidden desire ignited a forbidden bond with Anko, Kurana and Aruka? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And no start a new fanfic. Has been a little over 8 years since that fateful day that so many people's lives were changed when the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha sacrificed his life to defeat the Kyuubi no Kitsune. During that time Konoha fought a small war with Cloud and ended it nearly starting another one. It had also had a lot of dangerous threats from outside forces as well as inside of it that nearly destroyed them. Most revolving around a certain blonde hair, blue eyes, whiskered face boy. Others for other reasons. Now today was the day of the academy graduation exam and like always it is the Bunshin, Henge, and replacement jutsu as the test. A surprisingly large group of students passed and a few of the kids who passed were very well off in the financial department thanks to their parents' money. One such kid was named Beavis Birder. His father was a widow and a member of the civilian council. The academy teacher looked at the class and said, "Right, that was everything. Now for those of you who passed, congratulations and I hope to see you all on Monday for team assignments. To those who did not pass, better luck next year. You're all dismissed." As he walked out of the class, Beavis walked over to a group of girls who were packing their things and said, "So ladies, which one of you lucky women want to be my date to the party at my place tonight?" Each of the girls looked at him and started to walk away snickering and he said, "Hey, I was not joking." Getting a little mad. The girls said, "We know but you're not worth our time," as they left laughing. Beavis looked at them with hate in his eyes and then turned and saw the rookie of the year packing her things and he smiled and walked over and said, "So Kuranai, you going to come to the party tonight?" Kuranai said, "Yeah, I am going but I am not going as your date so don't ask. I already told you I am not interested in dating until I prove my ninja way. Besides you're not my type. Well CYA later." As she left the room, Beavis looked at her leave and thought, "We will see about that Kuranai. I will show you I'm your type alright. Hehehehe." A few hours later at the party at Beavis's house, his father left and he waited until he was gone and he came out and said, "Hey everybody, look. Sake." As he pulled out several bottles of sake. All the new genins looked at him and Kuranai said, "Hey, we're not old enough for that Beavis and you know it." Beavis said, "Old enough to kill, old enough to drink. Quit being an old maid and show everyone here you're not scared of a little sake, or are you really not a ninja?" As he reached under the counter and pulled out a glass and quickly poured a glass and handed it to her. Everyone was looking at her and she looked at the sake and then sighed as she drank it, coughing a few seconds, and Beavis quickly screamed, "See everyone, no harm no foul," as he poured several more glasses for the others. He smiled to himself and enjoyed the party over the next 30 minutes and then he saw Kuranai leaning against the wall looking a little sick and he walked over and said, "Hey, you okay?" Kuranai said, "Yeah, my head feels funny. I guess it's the sake. I never drank before." Beavis said, "It's okay, it goes away but perhaps you might go home and lay down. I mean don't want you passing out in front of all these people and never live it down. It would ruin your reputation." Kuranai shot him a look and said, "I guess so. I'll head home." As she quit leaning on the wall and started toward the door only to stumble and Beavis caught her. He said, "Here, let me walk you home." Kuranai said, "No, I am fine." As she tried to stand up straight only to sway a little. Beavis said, "I insist. I mean it's a chance for us to talk about our possible teams and what we think about who would make good teams. Trust me, we are both ninja of Konoha after all." Kuranai, who was feeling even worse for some reason, said, "All right," as she let Beavis lead her out of the house and toward her house. They made it about halfway when she suddenly felt very sick and Beavis said, "Here, let's go over here and lean against the wall of this alley so nobody sees you like this. I mean we don't want people to start rumors after all about you." She nodded with half-lidded eyes as he lead him to the ally and she leaned against the wall and slowly blacked out. Once she was passed out, Beavis smirked and said, I knew those pills would do the trick. Dad takes them to help sleep and when mixed with sake makes it where you won't wake up for a while. Now you're mine. As he leaned her down onto the ground off the wall and raised her dress and pulled her shorts and panties off. Kurana moaned a little and Beavis took off his pants and crawled over her body and looked at her face and said, You're mine now, bitch. And he drawed his hips back to thrust forward when suddenly he screamed out, ah, as he rolled to the side holding his nuts. He had tears on his face as he looked and saw Kurana being dragged toward the street by a blonde-haired boy with blue eyes. He was still in pain and looked down only to pale as he saw his nuts were bleeding and the kid said, Serves you right, asshole, as he kept pulling Kurana toward the street. Beavis did not care what happened right now. He was in so much pain. As the boy finally made it to the street with Kurana, he said, Hey, someone, help. This girl needs help. As he pointed to Kurana. An old woman looked at Naruto and sneered and then looked at Kurana and saw her state of dress and said, You filthy demon, raping a poor girl like this, and started to scream for others to come. More and more people showed up and they circled Naruto and Kurana, who luckily was covered by the woman who took off her coat to save her some modesty. The people saw Kurana passed out and the old woman pointing to Naruto and they started to hit him. As he was getting hit and beat down, a voice said, What's going on here? Making everyone look and see the Hokage who had arrived with the Anbu. The old woman said, That thing was assaulting this girl. The third asked, Really? And what do you say, Naruto? Did you attack this girl? Naruto said, No, that guy who's holding himself there did. I saw him lead her into the alley where she passed out and then he took her cloths off while saying that he used some pills on her to make her pass out and he was about to attack her, so I kicked him in the nuts. Honest. The third pointed to the boy and said, Is that true? Did Naruto kick you? The boy said, Yeah, that demon kicked me and busted my nuts. I need medical help. Not thinking about what could be believed by the rest of him admitting as he was holding himself in pain. The third said, Well, as I see it, Naruto just saved this girl here from rape and you miss started a riot in my village, so I am arresting you boy for attempted rape and you miss for disturbing the peace. You're both going to visit Ibiki and you boy are also going to spend the next 5 years in jail on top of your punishment for your crime for breaking my law. Now Anbu, take this girl to the hospital and arrest that boy and this woman. Naruto, come with me. Naruto nods and leaves with the Hokage and the crowd that had gathered and some muttered, Demon lover, not even thinking that Naruto did do the right thing. A few hours later, Kurana woke up in the hospital and she looked around and saw the Hokage sitting in a chair and she said, Hello, Hokage-sama, in a groggy voice. The third said, Hello Kurana. I was wondering if you could tell me what happened earlier. Kurani looked around and said, I don't really remember. I was at a party for us who graduated and then someone gave me some sake and then after a little while I started feeling weird and then Beavis, the guy who held the party and gave me the sake, offered to take me home. I don't remember anything after that. What happened and why am I in the hospital, sir? The third said, Well, you were poisoned by a drug that was to knock you out. Especially when mixed with sake. That boy, Beavis, then lead you to an alley where he attempted to assault you. Kurana paled and asked in a shaky voice, Did he? The third said, No, someone who saw you and him enter the alley came and when he saw what was about to happen saved you and dealt with Beavis. I have Beavis locked up right now and he will stay there for a very long time. Kurana said, Who was it that saved me, sir? The third was silent a moment and said, A concerned citizen. He said he didn't want you to know so that way you can forget all about this and get on with your life. Now rest. You have been given an antidote for the drug but you will be in here for the rest of the weekend. I would suggest from now on to never drink something from someone unless you know for sure it's safe. I mean, it's obvious that Beavis had this set up to drug you. I am sorry for everything that happened and glad someone saved you. Please now rest and don't worry. You're perfectly fine now. Kuranai nods as she watched the Hokage leave and she thought, thank you my knight in shining armor, whoever you are, as she smiled a small smile and fell back to sleep. 4 years later, Kuranai had worked hard after that event and had already started to make a name for herself in the ninja world as a genjutsu mistress. She had been a chunin now for 2 years and she had also started getting herself a new nickname, the Ice Queen of Konoha from men in the village. She may have gotten out of that attack safely but she never trusted men the same after that. She had made male friends but kept them at arm's length. She had started hanging out with her best friend and roommate, Anko. They had been teamed up together a lot and since she was 3 years older than Kuranai and she valued her advice since she was a true female ninja. She had also made friends with Kakashi, Guy, and Asuma having been on missions with them also a few times and since they hang out with Anko. Hana who had graduated with her also was in her circle of trust and besides Anko was one of the few who knew why she stayed arm's length away from men. Kuranai was now standing in the Hokage office waiting to receive her next mission and the door opened without knocking and a man she had learned to avoid for the last 4 years walked in and said, Hokage-sama. I demand that my son be released and reinstated as a ninja. The third sighed and said, no Mr. Birder. For the last time your son is still in jail for another year of his original crime and that is if he behaves plus he will still serve the 5 years for his second crime after his first term is over. I will not release him and I will never let him join as a ninja of this village. Do not come in here Aegean or else. Mr. Birder said, this is all that damn boy's fault. You should have let us kill him and this would never have happened. Not noticing Kuranai who was over to the side. The third said, Naruto is not at fault here. What he did that day was admirable and it is fools like you who are the real threats to this village. You think because you are a council member you can just get what you want when you can't. Now leave my office or I will have you arrested for disturbing my work. Now leave. As he released a little key. Birder turned and sneered and saw Kuranai for the first time and said, HMPH. You should tell the truth that you're spread your legs for my son wanting to suck up to him for his money and then I can prove that demon trash was the real villain that day or are you just his little demon whore. The third slammed his fist on the table and yelled, Anbu. And then 4 Anbu appeared and the third said, take this man away to Ibiki for breaking my law and also for threats and slander to a Konoha ninja. I am revoking his rights as a council member as well and he will be replaced. Now get him out of here. As the Anbu grabbed him with him screaming, you can't do this. As they dragged him away. The third sat back down and sighed as he rubbed the bridge of his nose and after a few moments looked up at Kuranai and said, sorry about that Kuranai. Kuranai said, it's all right sir. I have heard him say most of that before anyways. I do have one question. Why was he kept referring to Naruto Uzumaki sir? I mean what does he have to do with any of this? The third sighed and said, before I answer there is a question I must as your opinion of Naruto. Kuranai said, well I am old enough to remember the attack and the truth but I also know the difference between a scroll and an item sealed. Why? The third smiled and said, I thank you for realizing the truth. Now I suppose there's no sense denying it any longer. You see the person who saved you that day was Naruto. He was the one who followed you into the ally and the one who broke Beavis' nuts. I mean he literally kicked him hard enough to break them. The reason I never told you who it was who saved you was because I was afraid you would change your story if you hated him for what he contained. If you had I might have had to banish him because people hate him that much. Kuranai was stunned and said, I see. Thank you for telling me the truth. Now what was my mission sir? The third said, oh yes, the reason I called you here is Hiyashi Hyuga has asked for a female ninja to start taking his eldest daughter to the academy each day and since you are also the new teacher at the academy this year I figure this would be a good mission for you. He is wiping his hands of her training and refuses for any family member to go out of their way for her. He thinks this will toughen her up and make her a better heir. Personally I think this is a mistake but I can't argue with clans. Kuranai nods and said, "Thank you, sir, I will do my best." As she turned and started to leave when the third said, "Oh, and one more thing. Naruto never knew your name and he did not do that for you because he was wanting some kind of reward, so don't feel you need to do anything for him. He's not expecting it anyways." Kuranai nods and walks out the door. 1 year later, Naruto was on the ground bleeding. He had been found by a group of shinobi and they attacked him and left him for dead. He was unable to move due to the fact he had a kunai in his spine, making him unable to move. He was slowly bleeding to death. Kuranai, who was preparing for the Junin exams, had just finished her training for the day and was walking through the woods on a shortcut back to the village when she smelled blood. Being a ninja of the village and naturally curious, she decided to investigate. When she found Naruto, he was passed out and she gasped, and acting quickly she placed her hand on his shoulder and shushined them to the hospital. When she arrived she screamed, "I need a doctor quick." A few doctors came and when they saw Naruto they turned and walked away. She saw this and quickly shushined her and Naruto to the Hokage's office. The third was reading his Ika Ika Paradise book when Kuranai appeared and said, "Sir, Naruto needs help now." As the third dropped his book and ran around the desk and asked in a commanding voice, "Why did you not take him to the hospital?" Kuranai said, "I did." When they saw him they turned and walked away. The third sighed and said, "Stay here and protect him. I will be back in a moment." As he left. While he was gone, Naruto slowly opened his eyes and said, "Are you an angel?" as he saw Kuranai. Kuranai said, "No, Naruto, I am not. Hold on, the Hokage is bringing help." Naruto said, "Oh, I thought you were an angel to save me from my pain." As he closed his eyes, Aegean passing back out. Before Kuranai could think, the Hokage ran back in with 3 doctors and they immediately got to work on Naruto. Kuranai moved back with a few tears on her face and the third asked, "What happened to him?" Kuranai wiped the tears off her face and said, "I don't know. I found him on my way back from training ground 8. I smelled blood and went to investigate and found him in a puddle of his blood. I used Shushin to take him to the hospital and called for help, and like I said, as soon as they saw it was Naruto they turned and walked away. I then came here." The third sighed and said, "Thank you for saving him. I will make sure he's okay now, so why don't you go on home and get clean up? I mean, you got blood all over you." Kuranai looked down and saw she did have blood on her and she said, "Are you sure you don't need me for anything else?" The third said, "No, I mean you don't have any medical skills that could help right now, so there's no need for you to worry. You did all anyone could ask of you already by bringing him here. He will be all right now." Kuranai nods slowly and turns and leaves using Shushin to get home. A few hours later, when Naruto woke up, he was in a hospital room and looked around, and the third, who was sitting in the room, said, "How do you feel, Naruto?" Naruto slowly moved and winced and said, "I hurt, old man. I thought I died because I saw an angel with red eyes." The third smiled and thought, "Angel, huh?" and said, "No, Naruto. You did not die, but you came close. Can you tell me what happened?" Naruto was silent a moment and said, "I don't really remember. I was walking through the woods to go wash my cloths in the river when I was hit in the back. I fell to the ground unable to move, and then someone in a mask came and started to stab me over and over, Aegean. I blacked out after that." The third asked, "What kind of mask was it?" Naruto said, "It was blank except it had some weird kanji on it." The third narrowed his eyes and bit his thumb and drew something on a piece of paper and asked, "Was this the kanji, Naruto?" Naruto looked at it and said, "I think so, but I am not for sure. I don't know them that well." The third sighed and said, "I see. Okay, Naruto, you go ahead and rest and I will check on you later." Naruto nods and slowly closes his eyes and said, "Hey, old man, if that was not an angel I saw, who was she?" "She was pretty." The third said, "I don't know. Lying." Naruto nods as he falls back to sleep. The third goes back to his office and thought, "Perhaps, Naruto, you might find out someday." The next day when Naruto awoke he saw he had two white lilies sitting in a vase beside his bed and he blinked looking around and saw there was a card and opened it and read get well soon Naruto, my knight in shining armor, signed your angel. Naruto smiled to himself and thought, so she was an angel. Time skip. Day of team placements. Naruto was sitting in his chair next to Sakura and Sasuke waiting for Thair-sensei to come when a man with a cigarette in his mouth walked in and said, Team 10 come with me. And they got up and started to leave when another person walked in and the breath in Naruto's throat froze when he saw who is what's and he mouthed, Tenchiungle, as he looked at Kurana who for a moment looked at him and read his lips and said, Team 8, come with me. As she looked away to her team before walking out the door hiding the light blush she had. Naruto started to get up when Sakura hit him on the head and said, where are you going Yubaka, where Team 7? Naruto rubbed his head and said, I know Sakura-chan, I was just stretching from sitting so long. As he got up and looked out the window and saw Team 8 leave. Naruto thought, I wonder who she really is. I mean she looks just like that angel I saw that day. After meeting Kakashi and finding out there was another test Naruto went to the Hokage office and when he walked in the Hokage asked, so what is it you need to see me about Naruto? Naruto said, I was wondering if you could tell me about the sensei of Team 8. The third took a puff of his pipe and thought, so he remembers her, huh? I think I will humor him a little. And said, well her name is Kurana Uehi. She is 5 years older than you and a rookie Junin. Anything else you want to know about her you would have to ask her. Would you like me to arrange a meeting for her and you? Naruto said, no. I just was wondering who she was because she looked like that angel I saw when I was attacked a little over a year ago. I don't want to bother her on some kind of silly fantasy. I just thought I would like to know who she was. Thanks. As he left. The third smiled and thought, seems to me someone has a crush. Time skip. The day Team 7 returned from the land of waves. Naruto and his team had just been let go from the Hokage office when Naruto ran into Team 8 on their way into the tower. Kiba said, hey dead last, how's it going? Naruto looked up and said, hey Kiba, we just got back from an A- rank mission. What about you? Kiba gaped and said, A rank, how the hell did a loser like you get an A- rank? I bet you screwed it up dead last. Naruto looked at him a moment with a dark look and started to say something when Kurana said, Kiba, that's enough, let's go turn in our mission report team. As she looked at Naruto who looked into her eyes for a moment and then looked away as he started to walk away. Kurana watched him leave and as he walked away she thought, what was that in his eyes? It was like, I am going to ask the Hokage about it. As she walked into the office following her team. After her team gave her their report she dismissed them and waited until they left and the third asked, is something the matter Kurana? Kurana said, I was wondering if you would not mind answering a few questions for me sir. The third looked at her and said, perhaps if I can. What do you need to know? Kurana said, when we came in we passed Team 7 and then a few moments later we passed Naruto and Kiba and Naruto was talking a moment and I saw something about Naruto that bothered me sir. The third asked, what do you mean? Looking at her. Kurana said, well his eyes. I mean I know he has a mask on that hides his feelings. Anko has one also as you know so I can see through them better because of my experience with her and Naruto is basically the same. When I looked into his eyes when Kiba was talking about their missions something flickered in his eyes. An emotion I believe like a great sadness or guilt. Did something happen on their A rank sir to Naruto? The third sighed and said, I suppose you would pick it up. Yes, something did happen. I won't tell you what though but if you want to know you should ask him. I mean if he trusts you then he will tell you. I should warn you though he does remember you from saving him that day. He may not remember the first time he met you but he thinks you're an angel. He came to me after the teams were made and asked me about you. I told him your name and that you're 5 years older than him and then I told him just what I told you. If he wants to know you, then he would have to ask you. He told me he did not want to bother you with some stupid dream he had because of the attack, so he never sought you out. Kuranai nods and said, I was just wondering because it just felt weird when I looked in his eyes. The third smiled and said, that's really funny. I mean, his own sensei does not even pick that up in you with one glance can. Naruto is the type of person who does wear a mask like you said, but his eyes show his real emotions. I guess you can say the eyes really are the windows to the soul. Kuranai asked, does Kakashi know what's bothering Naruto? The third said, no, I was going to call him later and ask him to talk to Naruto about it. Kuranai said, if you don't mind, sir, I will go talk to him. You said it yourself. Kakashi did not even pick up on it and may not realize what is wrong because of Naruto mask. Just for my own concern, sir. The third smiled and said, go ahead, he lives 1 block south of Ikiruka ramen stand in the only apartment complex in that area. 3rd floor, room 309. Nobody else is on that floor, so you won't have a problem finding him. Kuranai nods and leaves, and after she was gone the third thought, that's interesting. She's able to read him with a glance. I wonder if she realizes how much she actually is concerned for him. I guess she wants to repay her savior. As he sighed and got back to his paperwork, Kuranai quickly found Naruto apartment building and scrunched her nose at how run down it was and walked up the stairs and got a sickly feeling the closer she got because the inside was worse than the outside. She thought, how can he live in a place like this? As she finally made it to the 3rd floor. After she found his door number, she saw the door was busted off the hinges and laying on the floor, and she looked inside and had tears going down her face. His apartment had been broken into and all his things had been broken and cut up, as well as graffiti on all the walls. She then heard a noise inside and quickly casting an invisibility genjutsu on her and slowly walked inside. She looked around and saw Naruto sitting in the floor of his bedroom messing with one of the floorboards, and soon had it picked up and started to pull items out and put them in his travel bag and said, well, looks like I am sleeping in the woods again for a while. Better go see Dad and tell him about the mission. In a sad tone as he put the boards back and got up and left. Kuranai's eyes got wide a moment as she hid outside the room as she heard him say his dad and that he was sleeping in the woods again, and she slowly walked behind him still under a genjutsu. She followed him through the village on the rooftops and then followed him up a mountain path to the Hokage monument. She was getting confused as Naruto set his bag down and walked over and sat down on the Yondaime's head and said, hey dad, it's me again. Kuranai, who had hidden in a tree and channeled chakra to her ears, blinked as she heard this and thought, Dad, Yondaime, and her eyes went wide, realizing exactly what this meant. She then listened in even more closely. Naruto sighed and said, well, we went on a C rank mission, Dad, and it turned into an A- rank mission. We first ran into 2 Chunins missing nins from the mist. I was going to act when Sakura screamed, distracting me, and then I froze when I saw her in danger. Then Sasuke, acting all heroic, attacked both of them like an idiot. Kakashi faked dying so he could see who they were after. He then congratulated Sasuke and blamed me for freezing. I got cut by a poison blade and then I bleeded out after vowing never to freeze Aegean. We continued the mission after we heard about how bad things were in Wave, and then we ran into Zabuza. Him and Kakashi got ready to fight and Sasuke got scared by some key and Kakashi said he would not let anyone die. He then got all bragging about how good he was and got captured in a water prison. He told us to run, but I refused and attacked some of Zabuza water clones and then came up with a plan after distracting the clones with my clones. I hanged myself into a demon windmill shuriken and then had one of my clones throw me to Sasuke, who threw me at the real Zabuza. After I passed Zabuza, I transformed back, throwing a kunai at him, forcing him to free Kakashi. Kakashi then bragged how he never falls for the same trick twice and continued fighting Zabuza. Then when Zabuza was about to die, a fake hunter nin came and put him in a fake death. Kakashi then stopped me, saying the hunter nin was doing their job and let him take Zabuza's body. Kakashi then congratulated Sasuke on a good job and even Sakura, who guarded the client but ignored me. He then passed out and I had to carry him to the client's house. After a few hours he woke up and told us that Zabuza was alive and the hunter nin was fake. That night we basically rested and then he showed us how to do the tree climbing exercise. He said it was to help us all, but the truth was he was doing it for Sasuke only. Kurenai frowned at this and continued to listen. I know that Kakashi had weights on because I had to carry him and I saw them. When Sasuke and I was doing the tree climbing, Sasuke had Kakashi weights. I acted like I did not notice and worked on my own mastering it. Sakura did it the very first time, but with mom's bloodline it's not surprising. Kurenai blinked and thought, mom's bloodline, does that mean him and Sakura are related, and what bloodline? If so, then why does he act like he wants to date her? Naruto sighed and said, anyways, as the days went, the client's grandson Inari finally said some stuff that pissed me off. He said I did not know what it's like to be sad and lonely. Huh, what a joke. Anyways, I blew up a little and left the house to blow off some steam. I passed out that night in the woods and the next morning I was awoken by a girl. She talked to me a little while and asked me if I had any precious people. I was confused by what she meant at first, and then she told me that you can only get true strength when protecting something precious. I got that because that's how you were able to beat Kyuubi. Anyways, I told her I did, but I did not tell her who. There are only a few I consider precious. The old man, my cousin Sakura, old man Ikiruka, Aruka Sensei, Ayame, and Kurenai. Kurenai blushed and thought, he thinks I'm precious to him. Wait a moment, cousin. If she's his cousin, then what is the whole thing about acting like he wants to date her? As she sat confused listening, Naruto laid back and said, anyways, she talked a few more minutes and then left. The rest of the time went by relatively normal until I was getting pissed again at Kakashi blatant favoritism of Sasuke Aegean and worked myself to exhaustion. The next day Kakashi decided to leave me at the house asleep and went to the bridge. I awoke shortly after they left and followed them to the bridge, but on my way I saw signs of people heading for the client's home, so I decided to go back to make sure they were okay. When I got there, two mercs had the client's daughter Tsunami held captive and Inari, her son, was running toward them screaming for them to let her go. The mercs were about to kill him when I replaced both Tsunami and Inari, and then I killed both mercs. Kurenai gasped and Naruto looked around looking, and after a few moments sat back down. Kurenai, who put her hand over her mouth, thought, so he made his first kill. Is that why he was feeling sorrow? Naruto laid back looking at the sky and said, I guess that should have messed me up, but my mind instantly told me that if they attacked there at the house, then they attacked at the bridge also, so I shoved the bodies into the river and told Inari and Tsunami to run to town and hide. I then took off to the bridge. When I got there, the bridge was covered in mist. I saw Sakura guarding Tazuna and I saw Sasuke inside a dome of ice. I could hear Kakashi and Zabuza in the mist, so I came up with a plan to save Sasuke. I created a Kajbunshin who ran under the bridge and came up on the other side while I used one of my special kunais and threw it at the ice dome. The hunter nin caught the kunai and then my Kajbunshin threw a smoke bomb and did a big distracting intro, making me look even more of an idiot. While everyone was looking at the clone, I used the Hiraishin to get inside the dome and appeared behind Sasuke. Kurenai nearly fell out of the tree she was in. She thought, what the hell? How can he do the Hiraishin? Is he really the Yondaime's son? How good is he actually? I mean, how the hell? As she tried to find the right words in her mind. Naruto pulled his knees up to his chest and said, well, I thought Sasuke died during the fight with the hunter nin, and I let my emotions of guilt because I knew how much pain it would bring Sakura-chan, and I promised I would never cause her pain. Because of my own inner fight, I summoned some of Kyuubi's chakra and used it to help me fight the hunter nin. Turns out Kiba was right earlier when he said I most likely would screw up the mission. The hunter nin turned out to be Haku. I did not know it until I broke her mask. She then told me about her life and asked me to kill her since she was useless as a tool for Zabuza. I did not want to. Even after she told me she killed Sasuke, I could not do it. I finally gave in and went to kill her, but she stopped my attack and used her ice mirrors to appear in front of Zabuza and took the fatal blow from Kakashi Chidori. Zabuza tried to kill Kakashi but missed and lost the use of both his arms. Then Gato showed up and kicked Haku's body. I lost it and whined like a baby to Zabuza, telling him how he should feel for her because she loved him and she was not just some damn tool. Zabuza finally cracked and asked for a kunai, which I gave him. He then went through several of Gato's men and killed Gato. After the battles were over, we buried Haku next to Zabuza on a sea cliff, and I made a new promise to myself. I would live my life the way I want with no regret. I would make my own Nindo in this world. I won't be just some tool. As he stood up and looked at the village, Kurana smiled as she heard this, and Naruto turned around and walked to the edge of the cliff backwards and closed his eyes and said, I live my life from this day forward with no regret. I live my life as if it is my last day alive, for one single step is all that is saving me from death. One step backwards and I shall fall to my eternal darkness, and one step forward moves me away from the edge. My life from this point will show me if my life is to move a step forward to safer ground or a step back to death. The people I meet and know in this world will be the ones who control my feet. Will they save me or doom me? As he held his foot over the edge of the cliff, Kurana's eyes widened as he said this and looked at him, ready to move as he held his foot over the edge. He held it there for several minutes and sighed, placing his foot back on the cliff top, and said, Well, Dad, I guess I better go. I still need to find a place to sleep. Take care now. As he grabbed his stuff and walked away, Kurana waited until he was almost out of the area and thought, I thought he might actually do it. I better keep an eye on him. As she slowly followed him. 10 minutes later, Kurana saw Naruto find an old tree with the bottom rotted out into a small cave, and Naruto set his stuff inside. Grabbing a bush and cutting it free, he placed it over the front of the hole, and he took his jacket off and putting it on him like a blanket as he laid his head down on his backpack and went to sleep. Kurana waited until he was asleep and shushined away to the Hokage office. When she arrived, the third said, Hello Aegean Kurana, what can I do for you? Kurana sighed and said, Sir, I have been following Naruto since I left earlier, and I have seen and heard things that have made me question some stuff. I would like to ask you about a few things if you don't mind, to help me sort out all I have seen or heard. The third blinked and said, Really? What would that be if I can help you? Kurana said, Did Naruto really kill someone on that A-rank mission? The third sighed and said, Yes. Kurana said, And is Naruto related to Sakura? The third's eyes got wide a moment and said, I see, so he does remember that. I was hoping he had forgotten that all those years ago. To answer your question, yes, he is. Kurana asked. Then why does he act like he wants to date her, and why is it he still lives alone if he has family, sir? The third said, When Naruto was 4, I had to take him out of the orphanage because of the abuse he received there. I knew who Naruto's mother was because the Yondaime told me, and I knew she had a brother because I remember when they first came to Konoha, and I know he died during the Kyuubi attack and his mother died during labor, so I had asked Sakura's mother if she would look after Naruto, but she was like most of the villagers who only saw him as the Kyuubi. She even attacked Naruto. As for why Naruto acts like he wants to date Sakura, I don't know. I had thought he had forgot that day, but since you ask, that means he must remember. Kurana said, So that explains that. You wouldn't happen to know who Naruto's father is, or was, would you? I mean, if you know who his mother is, you might know who his father is also. The third said, No, I am afraid I don't know. Why? Does Naruto think he knows who his dad is? As he looked at her. Kurana said, No, I mean, I just was wondering myself if you knew for him. That's all. The third looked at her and said, Well, I don't. So tell me, what else has been bothering you? Naruto said, I was just wondering if it's true Kakashi is playing favorites for his team. From what I heard, he's pampering the Uchiha and basically ignoring Naruto. The third said, I believe it, but I have no actual proof, and what's worse is the council is pretty much all for that anyways, so I can't really do anything about it. The only thing that could change is if they were to get another sensei, and currently that's not an option since all available Junins already have a team and the ones who don't are in the group that don't like Naruto, as he looked down. Kurenai said, right, well that's all I guess. Thank you for putting my mind at ease, sir. As she got up and started for the door. The third asked, may I ask why you were wondering if Naruto was related to Sakura and also if Kakashi was playing favorites? Kurenai said, oh, I just was wondering because if he was not then I would think he was becoming mentally unstable, but since you said it was true then I think Naruto is just depressed. Well, I must go. As she left. The third waited until she left and put the crystal ball in his lap back in his safe and thought, so Naruto, you know who your father is in the Hiraishin, I wonder why you never told me. You must have found that scroll from your parents in the Forbidden Scroll that night you took it. I am surprised though that you learned it already. I wonder though, what will you do with this information, Kurenai? I admire that you hid that from me, but you should know you could not. This could work out better than I thought in the long run. If my hunch is correct, things are going to brighten up for you, Naruto. As he smiled and started going through his drawers looking for some documents. Finding the one he was looking for, he began to fill it out. Kurenai sighed as she walked to her home. She was so deep in thought that she had completely missed the look her roommate Anko gave her. Later that night, Kurenai was laying in bed unable to sleep when she saw a flash of thunder in the night sky and heard the thunder as it began to rain hard. She looked at the rain and thought, this storm seems to be my emotions. I feel like at any moment my thoughts are going to snap. I can't seem to get the image of him holding his foot over the edge of the cliff out of my head. Is he really that close to his limit, and if so, what can be done to save him? Her memory flashed back. Naruto turned around and walked to the edge of the cliff backwards and closed his eyes and said, I live my life from this day forward with no regret. I live my life as if it is my last day alive, for one single step is all that is saving me from death. One step backwards and I shall fall to my eternal darkness, and one step forward moves me away from the edge. My life from this point will show me if my life is to move a step forward to safer ground or a step back to death. The people I meet and know in this world will be the ones who control my feet. Will they save me or doom me? As he held his foot over the edge of the cliff. Kurenai sat up in her bed and thought, do I save him or do I doom him? Her mind flashed back again. The third said, oh, and one more thing. Naruto never knew your name and he did not do that for you because he was wanting some kind of reward, so don't feel you need to do anything for him. He's not expecting it anyways. Kurenai walked to look out the window and thought, he does things for others never expecting a reward for it, his life is filled with pain and betrayal and he does everything he can to make others happy. Her mind showed another memory. Naruto slowly opened his eyes and said, are you an angel? As he saw Kurenai. Kurenai said, no Naruto, I am not, hold on, the Hokage is bringing help. Naruto said, oh, I thought you were an angel to save me from my pain. As he closed his eyes, Aegean passing back out. Kurenai saw a flash of lightning in the sky, Aegean hitting in the woods, and she came to a decision. One that would change her life. She turned and got dressed and went toward the door. Anko came out of her room to see what the noise was and asked, what's going on, Kurenai? Kurenai turned to Anko and said, I need you to do me a favor. Anko said, sure, but this late. It's like 1 a.m. Kurenai said, yes, I need you to fix the bed in the guest bedroom for me. I will explain later, but I need to see someone right now. Anko blinked and said, oh. Okay. This is not like you, but alright. As she turned and walked to the guest room. Kurenai pulled out her rain gear and left quickly. 20 minutes later, Kurenai found the tree she knew Naruto had hid in earlier and said, Naruto, can you hear me? She waited a moment and heard nothing and said, Naruto, it's me Kuranai. I know you're hiding in that tree. Grab your things and come with me. Silence Aegean and she had a tick on her forehead and said, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, get you're out here this instant. A voice asked, how do you know that name? In a shaky voice. Kuranai said, I will tell you once we get to my place. It is raining bad out here and you should not be sleeping in the woods in this weather. Please trust me. A few moments of silence was her answer and she said, I want to move your feet away from the edge. Naruto was listening to this and sighed as he slowly climbed out of the tree he was hiding in and Kuranai offered her hand to him and he took it to stand up and he grabbed his travel bag. She placed her hand on his shoulder and used Shushin to appear at her house and she said, come on inside. As she opened the door Anko was sitting on the couch and Kuranai walked in with Naruto following her and she said, take your shoes off and go down the hall there to the second door on the right. It's the restroom. I want you to take a shower and put some doctor. All your cloths are soaked, aren't they? Naruto looked at her and said nothing and she sighed and said, right, well my bathrob's on the back of the door. After you're done put that on and place your cloths outside the door. I will wash them and dry them for you. Naruto said, why are you doing this and you still have to answer how you know that? Kuranai said, I will tell you after you get out, now go. I need to talk with my roommate a few minutes. As she put her rain gear away. Naruto sighed as he followed her orders and went to the bathroom and started to take a shower after putting his cloths outside the door. As Naruto left the room Anko raised an eyebrow and when they heard the door shut she asked, so what's up little Kuranai? Kuranai growled and said, I thought I told you not to call me that. Anko hugged her and said, I know but it's not often that my little girl brings home a boy to sleep over. She then does a fake sniff like she was crying and said as she wiped fake tears away, my little girl is growing up. Kuranai hit her in the arm and Anko snorts and said, so what the Gaki really doing here? Kuranai said, he's moving in. Anko raised an eyebrow and said, really, and why is that? I mean it's not like you to bring home strays. Kuranai sighed and said, it's complicated. A voice from behind them asked, and why is it complicated? Making both women turn and Anko burst out laughing as Naruto stood there in a pink bathrobe and he had a tick appear on his head. Naruto said, that's it, I am leaving. As he went to grab his cloths when Kuranai put her hand on his shoulder and said, no you're not. Sit down. Naruto looked at her annoyed and said, why? Kuranai instantly did the most devastating jutsu any man can face. The dreaded puppy eye no jutsu and she said in a pouty voice, because I want to talk to you. Naruto thought, must resist, can't fall for, damn it. As he sighed and walked back to where Anko was sitting and sat down in a chair with his arms crossed. Kuranai smiled and said, good, now as for why you are here Naruto. I want you to first promise something. Naruto blinked and asked, why? Kuranai said, the one thing I know for sure about you is that you always keep your promises. Anyone who has taken the time to know anything about you can verify that, so I want you to promise while you are in this house to speak only the truth and you will not keep any secrets from me or Anko here. Anko said, and why am I in this? He's your boy toy. In an annoyed voice. Kuranai said, because you and I already have that rule and when you both have a lot in common so deal with it. It's non-negotiable. Naruto blinked and said, you're not my mother so don't talk to me like I am a little child. Anko said, I hate to admit it Gaki but I agree with you. We're not little children and for your info the way she's acting now is not a mother speech but a wife's speech. Mothers don't negotiate deals like making you promise things, they just flat out order. Wives do negotiate though. With a smirk as Naruto and Kuranai both flushed red. Kuranai said, I am not his wife. Anko laughed and said, I know, I was just teasing. Anyways Gaki you might as well agree with whatever she's about to say. The only time I see her like this she won't budge. Naruto said, so you want me to promise to tell the truth to you and her in this house? Why should I do this and what do I gain by doing this? I mean, you want me to do something that I may not like or even hate, and you have not told me why you even care for me to promise, why you came and got me tonight along with countless other things, as he looked at Kurenai. Anko looked at Naruto and said, chill kid. You don't have to be hostile with Kurenai here. I am sure she has her reasons. Naruto looked at Anko and said, sorry but I don't trust that easily. I have been shit on too many times to just go on blind faith. Especially with what she said to get me to come here tonight. You want my promise, give me some reason I should. Anko was about to say something when Kurenai said, when I was around 13 years old, I had just graduated from the academy. Anko shot Kurenai a look and said, you're going to tell him about that? Kurenai said, yes, you will know why in a moment Anko, so hold anything you're going to say until I am done. Please. As she looked at Anko with pleading eyes. Anko sighed and nods and Naruto said, what does this have to do with anything? Anko slapped him upside the head and said, shut it Gaki. What's she trying to tell you is something only those she trusts would even know about, so you better show her some respect and listen to her or I will make you suffer. Naruto was about to say something when Kurenai said, relax Anko. Anyways, as I was saying, I had just graduated and I was invited to a party by one of my classmates. I went there and was tricked into drinking some sake. I did not know it, but the guy put a drug in my drink to make me pass out. Naruto blinked and said, was the guy who gave you a drink a council member's son? Anko blinked and looked at Naruto with narrowed eyes and Kurenai said, yes. I take it you know what happened then. Naruto said, yeah, I remember alright. I had the shit beat out of me by 10 ninja that night and was cut from groin to neck for my actions that day. In a solemn tone. Anko held up her hand and said, hold on, wait a moment. What the hell are you both talking about? What actions did you take, kid? As she looked between Kurenai and Naruto. Kurenai said, Naruto here was the one who saved me that day, Anko. Naruto looked down and said, I understand. I am sorry but I must be going. As he got up and started to grab his wet cloths and put them back on. Kurenai asked, why? As she got up. Naruto said, the day you saved me when I was attacked in the woods. You did it out of pity and guilt. That's why you came out there tonight and found me. Now that I think about it, the only way you could have said what you said earlier was that you listened to me talk on the mountain to myself. You're doing this out of pity for me saving you that day. I don't want pity or anything for that matter. Thank you for the shower and a few minutes of shelter, but I must be going. As he walked out of the bathroom which he had left open to talk and change. He had just about made it to the door when Kurenai grabbed him by the arm and spun him around and said, is that what you think? That I simply asked you to come here for pity? Naruto looked away from her and she said, look at me. Naruto ignored her and she grabbed his face and put it where he had no choice but to look at her and she said, look at me when I talk to you, Naruto. Naruto said, why? Why are you doing this? I mean, if you want me to say thank you for saving me, then fine. Thank you. If you want to say thanks for me saving you, it's accepted. You are free to do as you want. I hold no grudge or favor over your head. Now let me go. As he tried to get his arm free of her hand. Kurenai held on tighter and said, no. Naruto tried to jerk his arm free Aegean with force, but Kurenai said, I am not letting you go. I am not letting you head back to your hell alone. You think I am doing this for pity or because of my own conscience? You're wrong. I am a ninja. I learned to ignore it a long time ago and I don't pity you. You think you're the only one who knows the pain of being rejected. Anko here had it almost as bad as you did, thanks to her sensei who turned traitor. I had it bad because of that day you saved me as well as being friends with Anko. I also had it bad because I never knew who my father was. My mother was a ninja and she had to sleep with someone to get close enough to a target to finish a mission. I was born not of love or care but of damn duty. You think that you're the only one with a shitty life. I admit you had to deal with it worse than most, but you're not the only one with a bad life. Anko watched as Kurenai got right in Naruto's face and thought, well, this is interesting. Wonder what lit the fire in her belly. Naruto looked at her and said, then why do you care about the demon child? Why did you invite me here and told her I was moving in, huh? Kurenai said, do I have to have a reason to want to help you? Naruto blinked and said, well, I never met someone who did something for nothing before. Kurenai said, really? Then why did you save me back then? Naruto said, because I don't like perverts. Kurenai said, but you saved me. You didn't have to, so why go out of your way to help me? Did you do it because you wanted something in return? Naruto said, of course not. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Kurenai said, and that's why I want to help you. Because it's the right thing to do. Anko thought, bullshit. You're both up if you both believe that. I can tell just by looking you both have something else. Naruto sighed and said, look, I don't want to see you and Anko here get into trouble because of me. If I stayed here then you and her would both be. He was stopped by a finger on his lips from Kurenai. Kurenai said, I don't give a damn about what people think, so stop worrying about us. Think about yourself once. Naruto sighed and said, I am not going to be able to talk you out of this, am I? Anko said, I already told you Gaki, when she's like this you might as well give up. Naruto nods and said, fine. I will stay here and promise to tell you and her the truth about things, but I don't want anyone to know I am here. I will use a henge to come and go so others won't find out. A male voice that made Naruto go wide-eyed said, that's really noble of you, Naruto. Making everyone turn and see a man walk out of Anko's bedroom. Naruto blinked, looking around, and said, Aruka-sensei. What are you doing here? Kurenai blushed and asked, how long have you been here, Aruka? Aruka said, since you left in the rain. Anko called me over because she was worried about you. So tell me, what has the idiot here done to attract your attention? Naruto said, nothing, Aruka-sensei. As he rubbed the back of his head, smiling sheepishly. Kurenai said in a harsh tone, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, what have we just agreed on? Everyone blinked and Aruka asked, Namikaze, what are you talking about, Kurenai? Naruto sighed and said, remember the night I stole the scroll, Aruka-sensei? Aruka nods and Naruto said, inside the scroll was my name and I accidentally put some blood on it and a scroll popped out. It was from my father. Anko said, so your dad was named Namikaze, and he had a scroll put in the forbidden scroll for you. Who was he, if you don't mind me asking? Everyone looked at Anko and Aruka said, Namikaze was the name of the Yondaime Hokage, making Anko go wide-eye. She looked at Naruto and said, you the Yondaime son. No wonder he used you. Naruto sighed and said, yeah. Anyways, until today no one knew I knew who he was and I was not planning on telling anyone. Aruka said, so the Hokage does not know. You should have told him, Naruto. Naruto's eyes darkened a moment and said, and he should have told me about Kyuubi before I was nearly killed by Mizuki Tem. Everyone in this damn village has kept secrets about me my entire life. The Kyuubi, my father, my mother, my other relatives. Hell, I would not be surprised if my name is not really Naruto, or that I am in fact a girl under some extremely powerful genjutsu. Hell, with the side effect of my no jutsu, I would not be surprised if that was true. I mean, my chakra control sucks so bad that I can't even detect a damn genjutsu if it slapped me upside the head. Hell, this all could be one as far as I know. Do you have any idea what it's like to find out your entire life is a lie? That's why I decided for once in my life I was keeping a secret for myself. If the old man does not trust me enough with the truth about my own damn life, why should I tell him the truth? As he let his voice rise as he ranted more and more. Everyone was quite a moment and Aruka sighed and said, I guess you're right about not, but what do you mean by your mother and other relatives? Kurenai placed her hand on Naruto's shoulder and said, That's something I want to know. Why do you act that way toward your cousin? Naruto closed his eyes and said, it's the only way I can protect her and also be in her life. Her mom won't let her come near me normally and has passed her hate down to her. At first I did it to spite her mom, but after I saw her getting picked on by bullies I could not sit by and do nothing, so I decided to help her and things went from there. By the time we entered the academy I had came up with the idea to pretend to like her so that way she could not ignore me and I could be in her life, and no matter what her mother said she would not be able to keep me away. After all, the one thing I learned for sure in the academy is fangirls can get away with stalking their objective and being involved in their lives, so why the hell not act like a fanboy to be close to my cousin? Aruka blinked and said, so you're related to Sakura. Naruto chuckled and said, yeep, why do you think I was so excited to be on her team the day the teams were announced? Aruka rubbed his temples and said, so, you're the son of the Yondaime and you related to Sakura. How are you related to her if you don't mind me asking? Kurana said, Naruto mother was the sister to Sakura father, making everyone look at her. She then sighed and said, after I heard you talking on your dad's head today I went to talk to the Hokage about finding out about if you really were related, Kakashi playing favorites, and about the incident with the two mercs. Aruka looked at Naruto and said, what incident, Naruto? You haven't told me about your mission. Naruto said, RC rank turned A rank and shit happened. I don't want to talk about it. Kurana said, you need to, Naruto. I mean nobody here will judge you different and this is something you need to get off your chest. I remember when I went through it. Have some faith in us. Naruto smiled and looked down and said, Aruka walked over to Naruto and kneeled in front of him and said, you what, Naruto? Got captured, screwed up the mission, let the enemy get away. What? Naruto looked up with tears in his eyes and said, I killed them, as he burst into tears. Kurana pulled him into a hug as he cried and Aruka looked at her and she nodded toward Anko and he stood up and moved over to Anko. Kurana made shushing noises and said, it's alright, Naruto. I know how you feel, but you did it to save that boy and his mom. If you had not done it then they would have killed them and then maybe later your team or other innocent people. Killing is not easy, but it's a part of what we are and what we must do. You don't have to get used to it. In fact, if you ever do, you should just quit being a ninja then. As long as you feel the guilt and sorrow over it, that means you're human. Naruto listened to her as he cried and after a few minutes he finally stopped and she said, if you want to talk about it ever or anything, the three of us will be willing to do anything we can to help. Oh. Okay. Naruto nods and Aruka asked, did Kakashi talk to you about it, Naruto? Naruto looked down and said, he doesn't even know. The only other person who knows here in the village is the old man. I don't want anyone finding out because they will say that it shows I really am a demon. In a sad voice. Kurana said, you're no demon, Naruto. Naruto smiled a small smile and Anko asked, hey Gaki, what did you mean when you said the side effect to your no jutsu? I mean from what Aruka-kun has told me it's just a very good henge. Naruto wiped the last of the tears away and said in an exciting voice, actually it's more than that. The truth is it's not an actual henge. It's real. Making everyone blink and look at him. Kurana asked, what do you mean real, Naruto? Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly and said, well, when I first created it I was trying to find a way into the women's hot springs, making Kurana glare at him. Naruto put his hands in front of him and said, wait, let me explain, as he felt the key coming from Kurana. She said, you have better hope it's a good reason or you will lose something very valuable to you, as she glared at him. Naruto said, okay, you see I had been following Sakura around and it was right after the Uchiha massacre the day Sasuke had returned to the academy. Sakura had tried to ask him out that day and he punched her in the stomach and called her a bitch before he walked away because she bragged how strong he must To be able to stand up to the guy who killed his family, so I followed her and Ino to the hot springs, but I could not follow them inside to see if she was okay or not, and since she coughed up blood I thought she needed to go to the hospital, so I tried to sneak in but was caught and threw out, and we had just started talking about henges in the academy, so I decided I would try and mimic what I saw an instructor do, but I messed up the hand signs and actually created my no jutsu. However, by the time I got it good enough to fool people and went inside, the hot spring had already closed. I remember a white-haired old man coming out the hot spring talking about lovely snake women and wondering if she was able to use some long tongue technique and about putting her in some book. Anyways, he saw me in my female form and came over to me and asked me to pose for his next book. He then said something about being some Mount Sage toad or something like that, and I did what I do best and used my feet to kick him for being a pervert in the nuts. Anko cracked her knuckles and asked, "Do you know who the woman he was talking about was, Gaki?" Naruto said, "No, not really." As I said, the hot spring had already closed and I just repeated what he said. "Why? Do you know who it was? If so, you should tell her she may be in some book." As he looked at her. Anko said, "Oh, I will tell her all right, and if I see that perverted frog bastard Aegean I will show him why he should not talk about women like that." Aruka said, "So anyways, Naruto, what exactly are the side effects you mentioned?" Naruto chuckled and said, "Well, the thing is I did not know how to cancel it after I had put it on, and so I was stuck as a woman for about 2 weeks. If you remember, I had missed school during that time. I was embarrassed about it, and then I finally ran out of food in my apartment, so I had to go to the store. I did not know the real different things about women and men back then, so I don't know how it happened, but when I was in the store this old woman grabbed me and led me to the back of her store and told me I had a problem I needed to fix. I was confused and it showed, and she told me my mother needed to talk to me about womanhood. I told her I did not have a mom, and she then sat me down and gave me an hour lecture on the details of the female body. I swear I still have nightmares. Especially of tampons." He shivers at this point and everyone's sweat drops. Kurana said, "So you mean that you wound up having a period?" As she tried to suppress a snicker. Naruto saw this and growled and said, "It's not funny, damn it. Do you have any idea what it was like for a 9-year-old boy who suddenly found himself as a girl runs into the problem of having a period with a demented old woman who swears that the is best in the middle of the time between periods, and how bulky a maxipad is or what a damn tampon feels like? I swear that woman would not let me leave until I had showed her I could use the products perfectly. Not to mention all the damn mood swings and cravings. Don't get me started. I swear if I had to live my life as a woman I would kill myself. I mean, how do you deal with the urges?" Aruka looked confused and Anko said, "Naru-chan, we are so going to have a long talk," with a gleam in her eyes. Kurenai blinked and said, "Damn, you really did turn into a woman, didn't you?" Naruto said, "No shit, Sherlock. Want me to do the jutsu now? I think I have a tampon in my gear I can slap you upside the head with if you don't believe me." Anko snorted and burst out laughing and said, "Why the hell do you still have them if you did that back then?" Naruto scratched the back of his head and said, I kind of get stuff at regular price when I use the jutsu. I don't do like Konohamaru does and try to get free meals and things with it, but I do like to be able to buy groceries at regular price without being out of date." As he looked down. Everyone sobered up at that and Kurenai sighed and said, "Well, anyways. You got anything else you want to say? We each will keep your secrets and not even tell the Hokage if you want." Aruka said, "If you want, when you come here just henge into me, because I come here all the time to see Anko so people won't notice too much. I will just use Shushin to come so people won't see two of us at the door." Naruto said, "Hey, why don't you teach me Shushin instead?" Kurenai said, "You don't have the control yet. You said it yourself that your control is not good, so you will have to work on it and learn the leaf balancing, water walking, and kunai balancing before you can learn it." Naruto frowns and said, "So how do I do them? I mean I can do the tree climbing but I don't know the others. Aruka walked over to a couch cushion and pulled out a feather and said, "You should have listened in the academy when I tried to teach this to you. All you have to do is use your chakra to make this feather or a leaf float above your head. Once you get that down, try it in your hands and then your feet. Try to make it where you can keep it balanced and spin it at each spot. If you get them down before you move on, try combining tree and leaf exercise together. Well, it's late so I must be going. CYA later." As he kissed Anko and shushined away. Naruto sighed and said, "So where am I to stay?" Kurenai said, "Follow me." As she led him to the end of the hall. She opened the door and said, "This will be your room from now on." Naruto nods and asked, "How much do I owe you for rent?" Kurenai blinked, having not thought of this, and said, "How much do you pay now?" Naruto said, 200 a week. Making both women gape, and Anko said, "Shit, what the hell? How can they charge you that much? Is that including utilities?" Naruto said, "No, that is just my apartment. My lights run 150 a week, my water 100 a week. I don't have gas or hot water and I am responsible for all my own upkeep." Kurenai's eyes darkened and she said, "How can you afford that much, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Before I graduated I received an allowance from the Hokage who paid the bills, but since I graduated he's not allowed to any more thanks to the council, and since the landlord said that his original contract was with the old man and now that I am taking over we had to renegotiate and he set those prices. It was either to accept or live on the street." Anko asked, "How do you pay that much? I mean you're only a genin." Naruto looked away and said, "Well, the truth is I sort of don't. All my pay from missions is taken in advance to pay them except for 10, and the rest of the balance I owe is put on the ledger as debt, so when I get the pay for the A rank it will go to pay off the back payment. That's why I begged for a higher ranked mission in the first place." As he looked down, Kurenai said, "You will split the utilities by 1/3, and as for rent you just have to pay 100 a month. Anko and I own this place and we just act like we have rent anyways, so that way if there is ever some repair like roof or windows we have money to fix them. So all you have to do is help cut down on utilities as much as you can and you will only have to pay 1/3 of the total utilities each month. Deal?" Naruto was wide-eyed and said, "Deal, but I still have my back payment I have to pay for my old place plus the money I owe the Ayame and her dad who own the ramen stand for the meals they gave me." Anko said, "You should try dango. It's all I eat." Kurenai said, "No, he needs a more balanced diet." Naruto said, I hear this argument all the time, so can we just skip it for tonight? I am a little tired. I do eat other things than ramen when I can." Kurenai looked at the clock and said, "Well, it is 3:30, so yeah, let's get some sleep. Good night both of you." Anko said, "Yeah, good night Kurenai, stray," as she turned and went toward her room. Naruto said, "I am no stray chicken." Both women looked at him and Anko asked, "What did you call me?" Naruto said, "Chicken. You said you only eat dango, and from what I have seen dango is a chicken getting a stick shoved up its and coming out its head, and they say you are what you eat. My name is Naruto, so of course I will eat ramen, but you Anko, you're eating dango who?" As he grabbed his throat as a senbon hit him in the neck and Naruto was gagging and fell to the floor. Kurenai ran to him and pulled the senbon out and said, "You did not have to put him out like that." Anko smiled and said, "I love your boyfriend Kur-chan. He can talk back with the best of them. First time I seen anyone who had the balls to talk to me about my food," as she laughed, walking away to her room. Naruto groaned as Kurenai picked him up and carried him to his bed, and as she sat him down she tried to get back up and found he had his arms wrapped around her. Kurenai said, "Oh shit," as she tried to get free but found Naruto only held on tighter. After 10 minutes she sighed and laid down next to him and thought, "This is going to be bad in the morning," as she tried to go to sleep. The next morning when Naruto woke up he found himself unable to move. He slowly opened his eyes and saw Kuranai laying on his chest and had both her legs wrapped around one of his and her hand on his crotch while the other was under him. Naruto thought, oh shit. Oh shit, oh shit. I need to get up. I got to piss bad and her hand's not helping. Wait, what the hell is she doing in this bed with me and where am I? Why is Kuranai here? Naruto then remembered the night before and he said, oh yeah, I forgot I am supposed to live here now. A flash of light caught his attention and Anko was standing in his doorway and waving a picture and said, oh how sweet. My little girl's first night with a boy. Now I hope you used protection, kid. Naruto growled and tried to move and Kuranai muttered, so warm, as she slowly moved closer into Naruto's neck. Anko took another picture and Kuranai slowly opened her eyes and froze and said, whoever the hell you are, you better have a good reason for being in my bed. Naruto thought, oh shit, she's going to kill me, what do I say to keep her from killing me? And a flash of Kakashi appeared in his head and he said, I got lost on the road of life. As he tried to think of something to get him out of trouble. Anko burst out laughing so hard she had to hold her side as Kuranai quickly flew out of bed looking around and at her cloths and said, oh thank God it's you Naruto-kun, I thought you were Kakashi. Anko who was still laughing said, so it's kun now Kuranai. Kuranai blinked and saw Naruto froze in his spot as he tried to get up and looked at her and she said, sorry Naruto. I did not mean to say kun. I guess this all was so awkward I did not know what to say. As she was beet red as Anko held up 2 pictures. Naruto said, it's okay Tenshi, chicken. Anko threw a kunai at him and as it cut his cheek and licked the blood off his face but Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke and Anko found herself holding a kunai at the neck of Aruka. Aruka said, now Anko, why are you attacking me? Anko stepped back and Aruka went up in a puff of smoke and Naruto was there and Kuranai burst out laughing and said, I can't believe he tricked you Anko with a henge. Anko said, whatever. Anyways I just came to tell you breakfast is ready. As she left and said, oh and Foxy-chan, you do know they say angels are real demons in bed, especially with wood like that. As she laughed at the red face of both Naruto and Kuranai as they looked at Naruto crotch. Naruto blushed and quickly ran to the bathroom and Kuranai shook her head and thought, things are going to get different now. When Naruto walked into the kitchen he saw Aruka sitting at the table eating some breakfast and there was several plates there with bacon and eggs and toast. Anko was drinking some coffee beside Aruka and he said, sit on down. Kuranai will be here in a moment. Naruto sat down and said, what are you doing here this morning Aruka-sensei? Kuranai who walked in said, he comes over for breakfast nearly every morning Naruto. Naruto nods and said, so how do you know each other if you don't mind me asking? Kuranai said, Aruka was on my genin team and since I hung out with Anko she met him and they slowly hit it off though neither talk about it. Naruto nods and said, well thank God, the rest of the guys thought Aruka-sensei was gay. Making Aruka spit out his orange juice as both Anko and Kuranai laughed. Aruka quickly wiped his mouth and looked at Naruto and said, why do you say that Naruto? Naruto said, well we never saw you with any woman and that one lady who asked you out you turned down. Then you always had me and the other guys stay after school all the time and never made any girls stay so we sort of thought you either were gay or an old maid. Personally I thought you were bi. Anko snickered and said, no, the only old maid here would be little Kur-chan here. Kuranai growled and Naruto put his hand up and said, no need to get mad Kuranai-sensei. I'm sure you just chose to find someone you love first instead of being some fangirl and you're classy enough not to just jump any guy who seems popular like some woman. I know you will find someone someday. Everyone looked at him as he picked up a bite of eggs and he asked, what? As he ate it. Kuranai who blushed a little said, well thank you Naruto. That was nice of you to say and very true. I did decide to find someone I love first but how did you know that I am not seeing anyone right now? Naruto scratched the back of his head and said, I just do. As he blushed and looked away. Anko said, Oh no you don't. The kitchen is part of this house and you have to tell the truth, so how do you know she's not seeing anyone? Naruto said. Well. Kurenai said. I'm waiting. Naruto sighed and said, the truth is I know because of Konohamaru. Everyone blinked and Aruka asked, what does Konohamaru have to do with anything? Naruto said, well, he heard me talking to his grandfather one day and I asked who you were and he asked his uncle Asuma all the time since then, and he said if I have a reason to know who you are then he should also, since he sees me as his eternal rival for wanting to be Hokage, so he asked me all the time why I want to know you, and since I never tell him he tells me what he knows, seeing if he can guess it, and I just remained silent, so I heard about your nickname as the Ice Queen of Konoha. Personally I think that title should go to Sasuke, but that's my opinion. As he took another bite. Kurenai said, so why did you really want to know who I was? Naruto said, curiosity. I mean I wanted to know why you saved me that day. Now I know, at least I think I know. I'm not for sure though. I'm not real used to people doing things for others without reasons. As he finishes eating. Kurenai said, well, you can get used to it from now on. I mean you don't have to worry about the rest of the village here. Well, I hate to say it but I must be getting to my team. Have a great day everyone. As she got up and left with Shushin. Aruka said, I must also get going. If not those kids will destroy my class. Remember what I told you about that leaf exercise Naruto, and remember, just because you know the leaf exercise now does not mean you should not still use it. It will help you to keep getting better if you keep practicing, so see you later and good luck. As he left after giving Anko a kiss. Anko looked at Naruto, who looked at her, and she said, so Gaki, how good are you? Naruto said, okay I guess. I know Henge, replacement, Kujibunshin, no Jutsu, Harem Jutsu, 1000 years of death, Cloak of Invisibility and Hiraishin. Anko dropped her sake she had now poured and said, show me. Naruto sighed as he reached into his weapon pouch and threw it at the wall behind him, and he disappeared and reappeared with a yellow flash. He sighed and bit his thumb and put a drop of blood on the seal and then channeled chakra into the seal before he put it back and said, I only have 2 kunais that have the seal on it though, since I don't want people to know I can do it. I'm not supposed to know who my dad is. Anko nods and said, so you have 2 E rank jutsu, an A- rank kinjutsu jutsu, AC rank taijutsu, AD rank genjutsu, and AS rank jutsu with 2 unknown rank jutsu. Naruto said, A and S rank. Anko blinked and said, huh. Naruto sighed and said, the old man put the no jutsu as AA ranked kinjutsu and the harem jutsu as an S ranked kinjutsu, both in the forbidden scroll, since I can knock out nearly any male with it as long as they are not gay. Anko nods and said, so how's your taijutsu? Naruto said, it sucks. Nobody would show me the proper katas and I have had to learn to make my own with my Kujibunshin's attacking me, but even then it's not that good. I mostly have to react to their attacks though. Anko narrowed her eyes and said, do me a favor, make a Kujibunshin. Naruto looked confused but made one, and Anko smiled and said, okay, leave the room and go to the front door, but leave your Kujibunshin here. I want to show you something. Naruto looked confused but left the room, and she looked at the Kujibunshin and said when he was away, hey Bunshin, tell the Gaki that his fly's open and to come back in here. As she punched him, making it dispel. Naruto looked down and saw his fly was not open and walked back in and said, hey, my fly's not open. Anko said, I never said it was. Naruto said, yes you did, you told me wait a moment. Anko smiled and said, that's the second reason the Kujibunshin is a kinjutsu kid. Anything they learn you learn, but it only works on information. If your chakra control sucks as much as you said, then use that to help your training of it. Well, I got to go. See you Gaki. As she got up and started to leave. She stopped and said, and one more thing kid. Kurenai is like a sister to me. I don't know what is going on with you both, but if you hurt her in any way or take her for granted I will kill you. As she left. Naruto looked where she was and hanged himself into Aruka and left the house taking note of where it was. He then went to his team's training ground and saw Sakura sitting on the bridge with Sasuke, and he walked past both of them and went to the end of the bridge and thought, might as well get some training done. He then created some Kujibunshin and ran up the tree and grabbed some leaves along with the Kujibunshin. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and copied the jutsu and smirked and said, "What are you doing, Dobi?" Naruto said, "Just working on tree climbing. I want to make sure I got it down good enough." Sasuke saw the leaf in his hand and asked, "What's with the leaf?" Sakura said, "That's the Academy Chakra Control Exercise. Remember Sasuke-kun, Aruka-sensei showed it to us." As she grabbed one of the leaves and showed it float. Sasuke copied her and turned his eyes off and said, "HN." Naruto said, "Yeah, I just wanted to review both while we wait. You know, Adobe like me needs all the help he can get." As he smiled and tried to get the leaf to float on his head while he stood on a tree. Both Sakura and Sasuke ignored him. A few hours later, Kakashi showed up and saw Sakura fawning over Sasuke and Sasuke ignoring her, and he saw Naruto and his Kujibunshin all standing on trees, and he thought, so he figured that out, and said, "Well everyone. I just came by to tell you all that I nominated you all for the Chunin exams and that you have to turn in these forms on Friday at 3 p.m. at room 301 in the academy. You each have to sign these forms and show up at that time. Remember, this is a choice you each have to make, so good luck, and you have until then to get ready, and you will not have any missions. Good luck and see you." As he left in a puff of smoke after handing each their forms. Sakura said, "So Sasuke-kun, want to go and train together?" Sasuke said, "No, you are weaker than Naruto." As he walked away. Sakura looked at Sasuke and Naruto said, "Sakura, if you want we can train together." Sakura said, "No Naruto. Why won't you learn? I don't like you." As she stormed away. Naruto sighed and said, "You also, cousin." As he looked at the sky and then went to get something to eat. As he was walking, he saw Team 8 walking and said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" Kiba said, "Hey Dobi, what you doing here?" Naruto said, Well, I was just coming from training. What about you guys?" Shino said, "We were also practicing." Hinata said, "Hello Naruto-kun," in a stuttery voice. Naruto said, "Hey Hinata. Dog boy here being nice to you." Kiba growled and Naruto ears twitched and sighed and said, "Well, I got to go guys. CYA." As he ran off down the road. When he made it around the next corner, he said, "I know you're Theer Konohamaru, come on out." As he turned and pointed to a box who explodes. Things went from there as Sakura showed up and she then charged after Konohamaru, and then them meeting the S and SIBS. Sasuke then shows up and they trade names. Naruto looked at Gaara and thought, there's something off about him, as he walked away. A little later, Naruto was walking toward Ikiruka's when Anko appeared in front of him and said, "Come with me Gaki." Naruto said, "What?" Anko said, "Come on. I promise I won't bite." As she led Naruto away. When Naruto followed her, she stopped on a training ground and said, "Alright Gaki, I want you to spar with me. I want to see your taijutsu. I also want you to create around 20 Kujibunshin and have them circle around us and watch both you and me looking for openings in each of our styles and see if they can find things to improve. No fighting for them. Just you and me." Naruto nods and asked, "Why are you helping me?" Anko said, "I got my own reason. That's all you need to know now, here I come." As she went to punch him. Naruto was soon fighting but found he was only on the defensive. He never could take the offensive. After about 20 minutes of this, Anko stopped and said, "Alright Gaki, dispel the Kujibunshin." Naruto nods and dispels them, and she waited a moment and said, "Okay, what did you see about your fighting?" Naruto said, "I suck." Anko snorts and said, "True, but you're flexible, your speed sucks, but you have good battle instincts. Probably from all the attacks when you were younger." Anyways, I say you can learn what I want to teach you. Naruto smiled and said, really? Anko held her hand up and said, yes, now you are not to say anything during this training. You are to do as I say without question. Understand? Naruto nods and Anko smiled and said, alright, I want you to make 50 Kajbunshin and I want you and them to each go through the kata I show you. Naruto quickly made them and Anko started a kata. She saw each of them watching her and then she said, okay, now you repeat what you saw. I will correct each I see doing it wrong, now begin. Each of them got busy and after 2 hours Naruto had the first kata down perfect after dispelling the clones. Anko smiled and said, very good, now fight me using what you just learned, as she attacked him. Naruto went through the kata and then at the end he actually managed to get a glancing hit on Anko's arm. Anko smiled and said, good, now I want you to follow these hand seals, as she showed him 10 handles. Naruto copied them and suddenly he felt like he fell to the ground. Anko said, good job Gaki, you just put on a weight genjutsu that only Anbu know. I won't tell you how to dispel it until the day of the Chunin exams, so get used to wearing it. Now that is all for the day. You have 4 days to learn 4 more katas. I want you to practice your chakra control as well as these kata in the morning. After lunch I will find you and show you the next kata. If you can learn the first 3 then I will teach you water walking as well. Got it? Naruto nods and said, yes Anko sensei. Anko smiled and said, okay Gaki, time to leave. As she put her hand on his shoulder and both left in a swirl of leaves. When Naruto and Anko arrived back at their home, Kurana was cooking and Anko said, now go take a shower. We will eat after you get out. Naruto nods and leaves as Anko walked into the kitchen. When she got there Kurana asked, so? Anko grimaced and said, if people would have given him a chance when he was younger I think he could have been Rookie of the Year. He mastered the first kata of that taijutsu already. Kurana dropped her knife she was cutting vegetables with and said, are you kidding? Anko said, no, he's also nearly gotten the leaf exercise also. Kurana said, is that so? That's good. Anko smirked and leaned over and whispered, so why are you going out of your way for him really? I mean you are having me teach him your mother's style after all. Why are you so interested in him to share your family secret? Kurana closed her eyes and said, I don't know. I mean after that day I was saved I had all kinds of dreams about who my knight in shining armor was. Then a few years later when I learned who he was I could not believe it. Back then I honestly wanted to just repay him for helping me. Then I had to start watching over Hinata and because of her crush on him I saw him a lot and my respect for him went up. Then the day I found him and thought he was dead something just snapped in me. When I found he was just barely alive I did not care but had to find a way to save him. He awoke and called me an angel. He asked me if I had come to take him away from his pain. My heart just ached so much that day and I did not care that I was covered in his blood at the time. I just wanted to save him. After he was in the hospital I took him a flower and put it in his hospital room. Anko was looking at her friend and waved her finger at Naruto who had walked in and was with his mouth open trying to say something but couldn't. She said, go ahead Kurana, finish what you're saying. Get it off your chest. Kurana sighed and put her arms around her and said, I don't know. After that day I would look around whenever he was nearby and if I saw someone hurting him I would cast a genjutsu to help him get away or alert the Anbu. Then when I became a Junin sensei and Hinata was on my team she told me what it was that she respected him for and it just made my impression of him go up even more. To be able to go through all that he did and come out sane just showed me how strong he actually is. Then yesterday when I saw the pain in his eyes as I walked by and then found him in his apartment when it was broke into and destroyed my heart hurt so much for him. It's the first time I had actually been there and seen where he lived and how he lived. I then followed him up to the Hokage monument and heard him talk to his dad on his head. He then said something and did something that struck me hard. He said, I live my life from this day forward with no regret. I live my life as if it is my last day alive, for one single step is all that is saving me from death. One step backwards and I shall fall to my eternal darkness, and one step forward moves me away from the edge. My life from this point will show me if my life is to move a step forward to safer ground or a step back to death. The people I meet and know in this world will be the ones who control my feet. Will they save me or doom me? As he held his foot over the edge of the cliff. When he did and said that, I was frozen in my spot and I was afraid he would fall, and if he did fall I felt like my world would fall apart with him. I don't know why that feeling hit me. It scared me so much I went to the Hokage and asked him if it was true about Naruto killing and if he was really related to Sakura. I was hoping deep down the Hokage would say no, so that way I could say my feelings I had then were fake but they were true. I tried to go to sleep that night and forget it all, but I couldn't. I laid there and the storm that came felt like my emotions. That was why when I saw the flash of lightning I made the decision to save him from his pain. To become the angel he called me all those years ago. To move his feet away from the edge and move him further to safety. Anko said, "In your arms." Kurana, who was so caught up in her turmoil, failed to realize what Anko truly meant and said, "Yes, in my arms, wait." What? As it hit her and she looked at her friend. Anko laughed and said, "Relax Kurana, you're going to blow a gasket. But seriously, it sounds like you got it bad for him. If he feels the same, are you going to go with him?" Kurana sighed and closed her eyes and said, "I don't know Anko, I am 19 and he's 14. I am a Junin and he's just a Genin. What if we started to get close and he later found out he does not like me?" As she felt a pair of arms wrap around her from behind. She said, "Okay Anko, you can let me go." As she opened her eyes and looked to the side and saw Anko sitting there with a smirk on her face. Kurana paled and looked over her shoulder and said, "Naruto, how much did you hear?" Anko said, "Gaki's got some serious stealth skills. I mean, he came into the kitchen not even a minute after I did and heard everything from the moment I leaned over to you, but how do you take such a quick shower, kid?" Naruto said, "My apartment water would only run for 4 minutes at a time, so I had to learn to take a shower quick," as he let go of Kurana and stepped back from her. Kurana turned and said, "Naruto." Naruto smiled and said, "I know. I feel something for you. I don't know what it is because I never felt anything like this before, but I want to try and learn what it is though. If you want to, we can just go one day at a time and see where it leads. What do you say?" Kurana thought a moment and said, "I would like that, but what if things don't work for us? I mean, what if you decide you want someone else like Hinata?" Naruto smiled a sad smile and said, "Hinata and I are not going to be together. I know she likes me, but I could not tell her otherwise because it would destroy her. I don't know what happened to make her that way, but I know that if I were to tell her, she would close herself off. I tried once to talk to her and she did not show up to the academy for the next 3 days. I figured if I just acted like I did not notice, things would be okay and maybe she would outgrow it. I do think she a friend since she never hated me but never anything more." Kurana looked at him and then after a few minutes asked, "What about the villagers? I mean, what if they?" She was stopped as Naruto put his finger to her lips and said, "I said I would live my life with no regret. If you want to do this, I will live my life under that rule always. We also don't have to tell anyone until we want to. The only ones who need to know are the ones in this house. Isn't that right, Aruka-sensei?" As he looked over his shoulder. Aruka smiled at his one-time student and said, "I suppose so, but how did you know I was here?" Naruto said, "Well, you smell of chalk." Aruka smiled sheepishly and Anko said, "So little Kur-chan, are you ready to grow up and be a big girl now?" As she smirked. Kurana shot her friend a look and said, "Perhaps, but in baby steps," as she pulled Naruto forward and gave him a kiss on the lips, causing him to go wide-eyed a moment before closing his eyes. After they broke the kiss, both looked into the other's eyes and both passed out. Anko and Aruka blinked as they watched this and looked at each other and then back at both of them who were on the floor, and Anko said, "Holy shit," as she went to Kurana. Aruka walked over to check Naruto and he said, "What the hell?" as he looked at Naruto. Anko looked at Aruka and asked, "What is it, Aruka?" Aruka said, "Check out his neck." Anko walked over and looked and said, "What the hell is that?" Aruka, who looked at Kurana, said, "I don't know, but look, Kurana has one also." A voice from behind both of them said, "It's Naruto heritage," making both Aruka and Anko look, and the third Hokage was standing there. Anko asked, "What do you mean his heritage?" The third sighed and said, "Since I take it you are aware of some of what's going on, I will just say that Naruto mother is from the land of Whirlpool. That symbol right there is called a spira. The Uzumaki family were the founding family in Whirlpool, and they were known for their loyalty, especially to those they love. What I was told was that when they find love, and I mean true love, their first kiss causes what you just witnessed. Them passing out and getting that mark on their neck. What it does is link them together in life and death." Aruka asked, "What do you mean, sir?" The third said, "Naruto mother did not die from childbirth. She died because her husband died. The moment one dies, the other will die, so that way they will be together in both life and death. Kurana and Naruto are now the same way. They both love each other deeply, but they did not realize the true depth they did. That was why when they kissed it happened. I am classifying this in SS rank secret and is not to be told to anyone, including both Naruto and Kurana. I don't want them to feel that they have to love each other yet. I want them to fall all the way on their own. Is that understood?" Anko said, "So you're telling me that when either Naruto or Kurana die, the other will as well?" The third nods and Anko sighed and said, "Well shit, this is great." The third smiled and said, "Oh, it's not that bad if you think about it. This way neither will ever feel the sadness of death of losing their most precious person. I am sure you and Aruka would not want to live without each other if you could." Aruka asked, "How did you know about this, sir? I mean, how did you know Naruto was here?" The third said, "I have been keeping an eye on Naruto since he arrived yesterday because of what happened with his first kill. I saw him and Kurana on the monument, and I was watching a few minutes ago to see what was going on, so as soon as I saw them pass out, I instantly shushed here to tell you both what happened so you don't freak out and alert the rest of this village, because I know both want to keep this secret. Now I know Naruto is keeping secrets from me, and I understand why. His use of that, just you being one of them. I have responsibilities to his father that he left for me for him, and I can't break my promise to him, so Naruto will have to wait until he is 16 or a Junin. Now I don't want Naruto or Kurana to know I know, so don't tell them about me coming here or what I have said. The mark on their neck will be gone by morning when they awake again. As I said, the only thing I know is that mark does is unites them in life and death, but if either starts acting strangely, let me know. Understand? I will then inform them of the mark and all, but I want them to have some happiness, and I don't want them to fear life either, so please don't tell them." Anko sighed and said, "Fine, but you have better help keep them a secret. I don't want either to be hurt by idiots. You know we have a surplus of them." The third smiled and looked at Aruka and said, "You know I do everything I can for Naruto, sir. If this makes him happy in life, so I will keep it a secret as long as it does not hurt them. Kurana has been like a sister to me over the years, and Naruto a little brother, so yeah, I am happy for them." Anko said, "Well, we better get them to bed, and I could always do a few more photos opportunities." Aruka smirked and grabbed Naruto as Anko grabbed Kurana and took them to Naruto room. The third smirked and left. The next morning when Kurana woke up, she moaned and arched her back and looked around and blinked and thought, "What the hell am I doing in this room, Aegean?" as she looked and saw she was laying on Naruto Aegean. She then looked and blew back with a nosebleed. Naruto felt something move and slowly opened his eyes and saw blood on his chest and noticed he was without a shirt, or pants. In fact, the only thing he had on was his boxers. He heard a groan and looked over and went wide-eyed as he was blew back with a nosebleed. Kurenai slowly got up off the floor and saw Naruto now had a nosebleed as well, and she looked at herself and screamed, "Anko!" as she quickly grabbed a bathrobe and put it on to cover her since she was only in a bra and panties. Anko smirked as she looked at the photo she had taken the night before as she quickly left the house. Naruto, when he woke up again, saw Kurenai ranting about killing Anko and he asked, what happened? Kurenai said, "Anko pulled a prank on us," as she stopped ranting and looked at Naruto. Naruto said, "So nothing happened last night? I don't remember anything after kissing." Kurenai said, "No, nothing else happened. If it had I would be able to tell quickly, so don't worry." Naruto sighed and said, "Good." Kurenai shot him a look and he quickly said, "I just meant I wanted to take our time." Kurenai's eyes softened and said, "Okay, well, let's get ready for the day. I am sure my team is waiting for me," as she left the room. Naruto sighed and got up and got moving, and he thought, "I wonder why I passed out last night. It was a great kiss though," as he was embarrassed. Kurenai, who was getting dressed, suddenly felt embarrassed and she thought, "Why do I feel embarrassed?" Naruto, who was walking out of his room, suddenly felt confused. Just then Kurenai walked in the hall and asked as she saw Naruto's face, "What's wrong, Naruto?" Naruto said, "I don't know. I was just coming out of the room here and suddenly felt confused for some reason, but I don't know why." Kurenai said, "That's funny. I was feeling embarrassed earlier for no reason also. Well, anyways, I got to get going. I got to meet Kiba, Hinata and Shino," as she mentally shivered thinking of Shino's bugs. Naruto said, "What the hell? I just felt disgusted by something." Kurenai went wide-eyed and thought, "Are we reading each other's emotions? If so, how? Let's test this a moment," as she thought of her one true fear. Naruto looked around and Kurenai asked, "What's wrong, Naruto?" Naruto said, "Nothing." Kurenai said, "Tell me the truth, Naruto." Naruto sighed and said, "I was just feeling terrified for some reason." Kurenai said, "So I was right." Naruto blinked and Kurenai said, "You're feeling confused now?" And he nods yes. She said, "Somehow we are reading each other's emotions. I don't understand how. Maybe it has something to do with the Kyuubi, or maybe it's just someone's sick way of saying we're soulmates," with a smile on her face. Naruto asked, "Do you think we should tell someone?" Kurenai said, "No, since I doubt anyone can do anything about it anyways, we will just have to get used to it. Well, I am going to be late, so I must be going. Have a good day, Narukun," as she kissed him and felt warm in her chest. Naruto also felt warm and said, "Have a good day, Tenshi," as he smiled. Kurenai smiled also as she left and Naruto turned into Aruka and left. When he was away from everyone, he turned back into himself and made it about 20 feet when Sakura appeared and said, "Naruto, why were you just hanged into Aruka?" Naruto sighed and said, "Oh, Sakura-chan. I was just preparing for the Chunin exam by working on all my jutsu with my better chakra control, and I have to do the basics also, so I hanged into Aruka to try and see if anyone notice. I guess I am not as good as I thought I would be since you saw through it," as he rubbed the back of his head. Sakura said, "No, I just saw you change back into yourself, so I thought I would ask. So are you ready for the exams?" Naruto said, "Of course I am. I am going to be Hokage someday, so I can't let some exams stop me." Sakura hit him upside the head and said, "Stop being such an idiot. I am going to look for Sasuke-kun. At least he will take these exams serious," as she stormed off. Naruto sighed and he turned around and went to practice chakra control, and when lunch came he ate some ramen but stopped on his way to train some more before Anko showed up. When he saw the Hokage standing there and he said, "Hey old man, what are you doing here?" The third chuckled and said, "Well, I thought I would take some time to walk around the village before the exams, and since I have not had a chance to talk to you, I thought I would see how you're doing. Will you walk with me?" Naruto said, "Sure old man, and I am doing great. as he walked beside the third. The third chuckled and said, "That's good. So how is things at your new place?" Making Naruto pale. Before Naruto could say anything, the third said, "I went by your place and saw it, Naruto, and when I was going to send Anbu out looking for you, when Anko told me that you were okay and that you found lodging somewhere, but she would not tell me where." Naruto said, "Yeah, someone offered me a place to stay, but I don't want them getting hurt for helping me, so I don't want anyone knowing." The third nods and said, "Very noble of you, though I do want you and the person you are staying with to sign a paper in my office for my records only staying. You can stay there so if something does happen." Naruto sighed and said, "All right, I will ask the person, but I don't want anyone to know." "Okay, old man." The third said, "Of course, Naruto. Now that we got that out of the way, I want to ask you something. I got a mission for you, Naruto, if you will accept it. It's as an SS rank mission and you are not to tell anyone about it, not even if you were to have children and told them. Would you do it for me?" Naruto said, "For you, old man, sure, but are you sure you want me to do this? I mean, why not someone else?" The third placed his hands on Naruto's shoulder and both disappeared in a swirl of leaves and appeared back in the Hokage office, and he locked the door and put up a privacy jutsu. When he was done, he said, "Naruto, this mission could result in the destruction of the Leaf Village. There are people with power in this village that I can no longer trust. As such, I have recorded all the secrets of this village, including my will, in a scroll. I don't know who I can trust besides you. Because of your situation, the people I am afraid of would never approach you, so that is why I am choosing you for this mission. Do you understand?" Naruto had a serious face and said, "I understand, old man." The third smiles and said, "Okay, this mission is in case of my death. Now, before you say anything, I hope I don't die for a very long time, but I am not a young man and I am not as strong as I used to be. As everyone knows, I have already retired once and the Yondaime was my chosen successor. Since he died, I took back over, but I have not found anyone currently in Konoha who exhibits the will of fire that currently qualifies. You exhibit the will of fire, but you are not qualified yet because you're not strong enough or old enough. As such, I am certain that when I die, I will not have named a successor. The council will elect someone and I do not know who. There are those I would like to see take over, but I cannot name them because of personal reason that I won't say. The mission I am giving you is the key to the secrets of Konoha and my will. My will includes the summoning contract for my family as well as instructions for Konohamaru when he gets older. I only want him to have them if the Hokage that is chosen has the will of fire, because I do not want him to respect a Hokage who will destroy Konoha." Naruto said, "So you want me to keep this scroll a secret?" The third said, "No, what I want to do is have you memorize the key, and if you, the person I believe who would make a great Hokage who exhibits the will of fire, deem the person worthy, then you may reveal it. If the person does not, then you are to remain quiet. The secrets in this scroll can destroy Konoha if they fell into the wrong hands. Do you understand the mission I am placing before you?"